Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Erica Cranmer and we are here to learn about the Bible, and occasionally we do some like travel-y stuff, like packing or room tours or travel-y stuff, and occasionally we do some life stuff. I don't think we've done any life stuff yet. I don't know. I don't even know what life stuff we'll do. Maybe like hysterectomy advice because I had one. Enough babbling. This is a long chapter. We're currently reading through Esther. That's the main point of this channel. We learn about God and we learn about God's Word. We are on the last section of Esther. Normally we do like one chapter per episode, unless it's like itty bitty or super, super long. But this is going to be the last section. And since the last chapter, chapter 10, is only like 3 verses, we're lumping it with 9. And we also lumped chapter 8, verses 15 through 17 with chapter 9 because that's where the section started. All right, so my ancient Bible, which I have abused thoroughly, is shedding these little leather crumbies everywhere. If there is anyone out there that knows how to, I'm pretty sure there's no way to get it to stop doing that. But if there's anyone, see, look, crumby, shedding right now. If there's anyone out there that knows how to get it to stop doing that, please leave me comments below, because I have tried like leather cleaner, leather lotion stuff. I'm at my wit's end. I want to find like a dry brush and just like sand it off. And I'm like, that would not be nice. You were supposed to take care of your Bible. I feel like I've taken care of mine by reading it. Okay, moving on. Moving on, make sure you hit subscribe and like and all the fun buttons so that you continue to get the next book that we're reading, which I believe is going to be Matthew, because that's what I think I've decided on. So make sure you hit subscribe and like so you get Matthew chapter 1 after we finish Esther today. Alrighty. Like, who can you laugh at if you can't laugh at yourself? All right, now we start with Esther chapter 8 verse 15, the triumph of the Jews. I was going to take a drink of my stuff, but we'll wait for midway through. The triumph of the Jews. When Mordecai left the king's presence, he was wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city to which the edict of the king came, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebration, and many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. I can't talk. Chapter 9. On the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, the edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. On this day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them, but now the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their cities and all the provinces of King Xerxes to attack those determined to destroy them. No one could stand against them, because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of them, and all the nobles of the provinces, the Straps? I can't pronounce that word. The governors and the king's administrators helped the Jews because fear of Mordecai had seized them. Mordecai was prominent in the palace. His reputation spread throughout the province, and he became more and more powerful. The Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. They also killed Pershadath, Thalphon, Ashetha, Poratha, Adalia, Aridatha, Masha, Arishia, Arida, and Bezatha, the 10 sons of Hamish, son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. But they did not lay their hands on the plunder. The number of those killed in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king that same day. The king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman in the citadel of Susa. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? It will be granted. If it pleases the king, Esther answered, give the Jews in Susa permission to carry out this day's edict tomorrow also, and let Haman's 10 sons be impaled on poles. So the king commanded that this be done. An edict was issued in Susa, and they impaled the 10 sons of Haman. The Jews in Susa came together on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they put to death in Susa 300 men, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Meanwhile, the remainder of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also assembled to protect themselves and get relief from their enemies. They killed 75,000 of them, but did not lay their hands on the plunder. This happened on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and the 14th day they rested, and made it a day of fasting and joy. The Jews in Susa, however, had assembled on the 13th and 14th, and then on the 15th day they rested, and made it a day of feasting and joy. That is why rural Jews living in villages observe the 14th of the month of Adar as a day of joy and feasting, a day for giving presents to each other. 1 second. Purim established. Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews throughout the provinces of King Xerxes, near and far, to have them celebrate annually the 14th and 15th day of the month of Adar, as the time when the Jews got relief from their enemies, and as the month when their sorrow was turned into joy and their mourning into a day of celebration. He wrote them to observe the days as days of feasting and joy, and giving presents of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So the Jews agreed to continue the celebration they had begun, doing what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast the pur, that is the lot, for their ruin and destruction. But the plot came to the king's attention. He issued written orders that the evil scheme Haman had devised against the Jews should come back on his own head, and that he and his sons should be impaled on poles. Therefore, these days were called Purim, from the word pure, because of everything written in this letter, and because of what they had seen and what had happened to them. The Jews took it on themselves to establish the custom that they and their descendants and all who joined them should, without fail, observe these 2 days every year in the way prescribed at the time appointed. These days should be remembered and observed in every generation by every family, and in every province and in every city. And these days of Purim should never fail to be celebrated by the Jews. Nor should the memory of these days die out among their descendants. So Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, along with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full authority to confirm the second letter concerning Purim. And Mordecai sent letters to all the Jews in the 127 provinces of Xerxes' kingdom, words of goodwill and assurance, to establish these days of Purim at their designated times, as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther, had decreed for them, and as they had established for themselves and their descendants in regard to their time of fasting and lamentation. Esther's decree confirmed these regulations about Purim, and it was written down in the records. And then chapter 10. The greatness of Mordecai. King Xerxes imposed tribute throughout the empire to its distant shores, and all his acts of powers and might, together with a full account of the greatness of Mordecai, whom the king had promoted, are they not written in the book of the annals of the king of Media and Persia? Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Xerxes, preeminent among the Jews, and held in high esteem by his many fellow Jews, because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all the Jews. Oh, sorry. That was a long one there. All right. So, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? That's a lot to take in, huh? So, they were able to defend themselves, but they didn't take any of the plunder. So, they didn't, loot. They didn't take, say, it was me, they wouldn't have taken my necklace or my earrings. Not that they're worth anything. They're cheap off of Amazon. But, if they were, because back that day, the Persians, they really valued their jewels. The men even would, decorate their beards with gems, actual gemstones. So, imagine, a guy with a big, long beard. He would have, diamonds, rubies, emeralds decorating his beard. So, there was loot to be looted. So, they defended themselves, but they didn't take the plunder. These highly plunderable people. So that is something very interesting to note on. Also, the Jews had the backing of the governments. The authorities were with them. It states back up here in chapter 9 that no one could stand against them because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of them. They saw how God worked for them. When you were with God, God is with you and he protects you. Makes me want to tear up. Because it's so true. When God's also with you when you kind of act like the prodigal son and you don't know who that is. We'll talk about him later. But when you act a fool and run away from God's still with you, but he's not with you whenever you're God, please help me. When you're God, please help me, God's really with you. Whenever you're just doing your own thing and acting like a fool, God's just kind of like an umbrella. You're still going to get wet. Is that a good way to put it? I feel like that might be a good way to put it, but at the same time, it kind of sounds you can do whatever the heck you want and God's going to just protect you. Like, you can run into a spike and you're not going to die, because that's not how God works. But whenever you are with God and God is with you, God's will is so strong in your life that God will protect you from a lion in a den, like Daniel. Also, don't be out there tempting fate like a fool. But like up here, it also says, like, people of all nationalities became Jews because of the fear the Jews had seized them. I think we also have to remember that, like, Judaism can be like you can't just change your DNA, but you can change your religion. Think about that bit too. So, like, they're not just out there being like, oh, I'm Jewish. Like, you can change your, like, I can't change the fact that, like, what my parents' genetics gave me, but, I can convert to Christianity. At least that's how I take that particular verse. I could be wrong. I need to quit saying, So anyways, and then we go back to chapter 9 in verse 3. And they say, all the nobles of the provinces, the stirrups, the governors, the king's administrators helped the Jews because the fear of Mordecai, the Jew, Mordecai is the Jew, notated most in this story, other than Esther, had seized them. So the government, everyone was backing the Jews because God was with them. Because God was with them. So just, that's really something to think about. Who do you want to be with you? So then it talks about Purim, which is a Jewish holiday. I'm not going to get into the Jewish holidays, at least today. Probably won't really get too in depth with them. My nose is definitely my allergies. I'm allergic to my pets. And then, I don't know. What are your thoughts, everyone? Tell me your thoughts. Make sure you hit subscribe and like, and hit all the good stuff. Subscribe, like. Why do I call it the good stuff? Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you want a verse of the day, probably not every day, but like a few times a week, check out my Instagram. I have a link tree somewhere, probably in my bio. Check out my link tree for that. I don't know. And next week we're going to start a new a new book of the Bible. So we'll be on chapter 1, and we're going to start with Matthew. So come check out Matthew, chapter 1 next week on Thursday. This is Crystal Light. This is what I normally drink. This is some coffee. Back when I was on vacation, I was like drinking some Pepsi Light. Oh, good grief. All right. Bye, before I start babbling about some nonsense.